Welcome, Comadres and Friends, to the Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club November 2023 Zoom teleconference. This is Maria Ferrer, Director of the Book Club. Tonight, we have the pleasure of interviewing author V.Castro, a two-time Bram Stoker Award nominated writer born in San Antonio, Texas, to Mexican-American parents. She has been writing horror stories since she was a child, always fascinated by Mexican folklore and the urban legends of Texas. Castro now lives in the United Kingdom with her family. Interviewing Miss Castro is Viridiana Word. Viridiana is an educator and is on the board of directors of the Gumpers Preparatory Academy. She is the facilitator of the Las Comadres Book Club in San Antonio. In San Diego, California. Take it away, comadre.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, V, for joining us today. Thank you so much for your time. I gotta tell you, I've been following your career for quite some time, mostly on Instagram, and I was so fascinated by the thought and the premise of the book, The Haunting of Alejandra, and that when I picked it up from the very beginning, it just grabs you. And it's one of those, it's not just the haunting of Alejandra, it was also the haunting for Viridiana because it just stayed with me for so long. But for the comadres that haven't yet read it or haven't begun to read the book, can you give us a brief synopsis for our readers, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for having me, for reading the book, for your support on social media. It means so much to me. Thank you so much. But you know, the book is, I wanted to show how generational trauma, how generational, memory does not end until we confront it, if we want to confront it. And so I follow one bloodline all the way back to the Spanish conquest of Mexico, because a lot of my books, this one especially, I like to dive into identity. I like to dive into those to gender, our roles that we are assigned at birth or that we take on subconsciously. And a lot of those things I feel have developed, especially for Mexican Americans, especially back then. I'm mestiza, and we didn't exist before then. It was a whole nother race of people were created. And as people migrated and adopted new identities, had different ways they had to view their culture as time moved on, I wanted to show that and how that affects you, not just the immediate people of the conquest, but down the bloodline, and how different ideas of who you are and who you're supposed to be, how that resonates through the ages, and not always for good, not always for good. And then I wanted to interweave that with postnatal depression. I wanted to also show, different women in different periods of time and how their roles evolved and how they viewed themselves, how that evolved. And there's a lot of different things. And I do it, again, through not only our history, but also our folklore, the story of La Llorona, because it's something that a lot of Latinos grow up hearing about La Llorona, like La Lechuza. But where did this story originate? And a big problem our community has is a lot of times our stories, our histories are not told by us. They're told by other people. And that lens and that viewpoint, that bias is given to that story. So I wanted to say, right, I've experienced X, Y, and Z in my life, and I want to explore that through this story, this tale I've been told since I was born, and my mom had heard. And what does it mean? And how has the meaning of La Llorona changed over time?
So, and you're right. I feel like with everyone I talk to, I mean, I was born in Mexico and migrated to the United States, and so I grew up around a lot of Mexican Americans, and I feel like a lot of us have different versions of the story of La Llorona. Would you say that the way
Yes.
that La Llorona appears in The Haunting of Alejandra is perhaps reflected on the version that that you grew up with as a child?
Yeah, definitely. Again, I grew up in South Texas,
Mhm.
not far from the border, but far enough that it was a different experience to my relatives who live there and who are born there, and definitely different from me going over there to visit them or go on vacation. As a college student, I went, totally different.
Mhm.
And I respect that. I know that it is a different experience being Mexican American versus Mexican, and how, kind of being torn between those two cultures and those identities, and the indigenous culture, in indigenous beliefs, you know, believing, growing up Catholic, but not feeling really like it resonated.
Mhm.
And so La Llorona, I can only go as far as, my perspective and what I think the women in my family kind of thought about it. My great grandmother came here when she was 15, and, very much had the viewpoint, nope, we're going to make it work here. We're American. And, it did a bit of a disservice to our generations. But again, I wanted to show that,
Mhm.
and 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 the kind of the trauma that it can cause, not really knowing where you belong in your identity. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to just kind of follow up a little bit. Um, for you growing up, and now that you've spent so much time writing about La Llorona and just kind of really having her come to life in this book in such a like a vivid manner. I mean, I saw her in my mind, and this book, let me tell you, is terrifying on so many different levels, but we'll get into that a little bit. It's not just La Llorona, but it's so many of the themes that, because they're so realistic and they're so relatable, I feel, and it could be any one of us, right? But in your mind, going back to La Llorona, do you think, is she a villain or is she a victim in the context of our history and the way we view her?
I think she is a woman formed by her circumstances,
Mhm.
like a lot of us. Like,
Mhm.
we can look back at our aunties and our great grandmothers and our mothers, and pass judgment. It's so easy. I've had big drag out screaming matches with my mom
Mhm.
about things. And my great grandmother, who I love dearly, but could be a bit racist.
Mhm.
Okay, to be real, could be racist. And again, you look, I think a lot of us, and a lot of the women, as you see in Alejandra, are formed by their circumstances, their education, their opportunities, and in some cases, what did they have to do to survive? I have my next book coming out with Del Rey, comes out in April, and it's called Immortal Pleasures, and it's about La Malinche,
Oh.
Malinali, who translated for Cortez. And it's so easy to pass judgment, to say, oh, well, look what she did.
Mhm.
But as an indigenous woman, sold not once, a few times, and then again to these new people that had never been seen before, she was a woman of circumstances, and she did what she had to do to survive, considering what happened to a lot of the other women and children during that time. And that, for me, is something I like to explore, is survival, being a person in certain circumstances, not passing judgment, but understanding it. Because I think in that way, we can better understand ourselves, find peace within ourselves, find peace with perhaps our mothers, our aunties, the previous generations, but also not make the same mistakes.
Correct.
And that's not always easy, because people don't always want to look at themselves in like the bright light of day and admit to things they want to change, because it's hard work. As you see in Alejandra, doing the inner work is so hard.
Yeah, definitely those generational curses, right? They stay with you until somebody finally says that's enough. And I feel like it takes a lot of generations sometimes to undo some of that trauma and to stop those kind of cycles.
Absolutely.
It's really exciting to hear that you're writing about La Malinche, because even to this day, I feel in Mexico and here, you see her name used as symbolic for someone who's a traitor, right? To call somebody a Malinche, so it's almost an insult, right? So I'm glad to see that, I'm actually have seen it quite a bit, like kind of like the reclaiming of her name and just kind of her image and her persona, and what that means for women, particularly Mexican American women, to do what they have to do in order to survive. And La Malinche as well, she was a mother, and I feel like that is a big central theme in The Haunting of Alejandra, right? It's like motherhood, parenthood. It's I very much appreciated how, by all, on the surface, it seems that Alejandra has a very comfortable life, a life that
Yeah.
a lot of people dream of. But what you have highlighted is how lonely it is and how much under the microscope mothers are. And there's different types of mothers here in this book. I mean, Alejandra being the protagonist here, but are some of these women inspired by women that you know, or that you know of, perhaps, and through your generations?
Yeah. So Frances, who's a real tragic character. My I had my great grandmother who I was close with, but my grandmother on my mother's side, she left. She left 6 kids.
Wow.
That was real. That really happened. And my mom, I come from a long line of military men, because for a lot of Latinos, the military was a way to get educated through the GI Bill, but also, there's a sense of social mobility. And and Kathy was inspired by my mother. Obviously, she did not, I was not adopted. She didn't give me up, but she had me very young. And she didn't go to college or law school until she was in her 40s. She had her kids, but she was a domestic worker. We were homeless at one point. I mean, she really went through a lot being a young mom. And so I reimagined that history. And then based on the things I had seen and heard, and the way my grandmother on my mom's side affected the family, especially the kids, and that trauma that caused, but also what was the trauma in her life to cause her to just get up and leave? Same with La Llorona. What would cause someone to take the lives of their children and their own lives? And that's why I also want to discuss, postnatal depression, because it is a very insidious illness, and we don't really talk about it, because again, we have this vision of La Virgen de Guadalupe, who's beautiful and wonderful, and the Virgin Mary. But, being the mother of Christ, this virginal mother who's all self-sacrificing and all of these things, what's the cost of that? That's, what she's known for. That's all. And that's beautiful if that's your faith. That is not my faith. I actually like the opposite end with Santa Muerte, who is very much, about self-empowerment and believing in what is real and what is that definite thing, and that is death. That comes to us all. That is finite. That is what we can see and feel and smell. But then you've got on the opposite spectrum, La Virgen de Guadalupe, and it's, the angel singing, but that self-sacrifice, it has a huge cost.
It does. And another thing that you touch on that is not spoken about, particularly I would feel in the Latino community, is that asking for help and the stigma that comes with it. So I have to tell you that I really enjoyed the curandera therapist and just kind of the way that Alejandra kind of finds, I won't spoil it, but finds what she needs within that realm. Can you talk a little bit about the curandera and why you decided to make, I felt it was great that she reached out to someone for help, which is something you don't really see and you don't talk about because, God forbid you see a therapist because then estás loca, right? Or something's wrong with you. But why a curandera? Why did you decide to weave that in? It's such a beautiful part of our culture. And I was so happy to see it there. But how did you decide? How did you land on that decision?
Because we, after the conquest, healing had to come from the community, right? The midwives, it had to come from the community because, our people were forced to not rely on their indigenous faith and beliefs. And to me, I'm very much an advocate of people reaching back to their ancestry, to their indigenous beliefs, and finding strength and not shame in those things. Finding strength from the past so you can learn from them. And also learning natural healing, natural ways of viewing the world. Now, if someone needs medication, I'm not saying don't ever take, yes, if you need to be medicated and you need to be, a medical, that's your route, fine, great. But I also feel like I saw a therapist who was not Latina, but she was a woman of color. And she was a spiritual woman. And I cannot tell you what a medicine that was. And I feel like, there's a line in there. I'm not saying where it is because I don't want to spoil her, but I say, Alejandra was a medicine for herself. She became her own medicine woman, and she could be medicine for others. I truly feel that there are people in our communities that are given gifts of healing, of insight, and that I think it's important to seek those people out, to support them. We need more, healers from our communities to be supported, because there are certain things that, you just have to have the perspective. You have to have someone who's kind of can look and say like, yeah, I know. I think there's another level of empathy and compassion when you have someone who is from the community or your community, whatever it is, to speak to. And I also want to encourage, again, young girls and women of color, Latinas, to go into those fields. And again, not be ashamed of indigenous practices. So what if you're not Catholic, Pentecostal, Baptist, Christian, whatever? You're a bruja, great. You have beliefs, you have soul. And to me, that's important. And I want to encourage that. think there's a lot of strength in our history, a lot of things that, our ancestors did and believed that helped them, and they certainly can help us. Because otherwise we're just products of the colonizers. We're just products of colonization, and we're lost in that thinking. And if we all think the same, look the same, speak the same, help each other the same, we're going to lose something. And I think there's a wealth of that we're missing out on. And I feel like the time is now for us to kind of reach back and find the strength in that.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for writing about these characters and these aspects of our culture that, they're not very mainstream, and you don't see them very often. And when you do, I feel like it's in a mystic sense. It's not really normalized that there are healers among us, and that there are people there. So thank you so much. I want to tell you that at least, I have a very small platform. I have a classroom that I share your books in whenever, I read them. I share them with my students. And I talk about them. And so I hope that, wherever you find yourself and people listen to you talk, that they can be inspired to share these stories, because they are important, and we are here, and people need to know that. But on the opposite spectrum of the curandera, who was, I think, one of my favorite characters, I gotta really ask about the useless husband, Matthew. He I mean, he was just I wanted to just kind of yell at him through the pages and be like, are you serious right now? Look at what's in front of you? And he just said, why are you complaining? Just kind of, you're okay. And the problem is that I've heard that voice so many times, whether it's be people that I know, and I know their partners are not supportive, they are dismissive. Why was it important to you to write him in that sense?
Because Matthew represents the outer world and the opinions of other people, lovers, could be parents, and to anybody, right? And I wanted to show that, the only voice that you need to listen to, the only real truth, is the one that's inside, because you're living in this body, you're living in this experience. And that little whisper, your soul, is what you need to be listening to, your own inner power. And so many times we give our power away. We kind of, in the beginning of the book, I say, her hand wasn't a hand, it was a blade to carve out her heart for anybody who'd ask for it. It's like the people pleasers and the people that are attracted to people pleasers, the narcissists, the ones that will not fully support you because they can't fully support themselves. They can't fulfill their dreams. They can't see their dreams coming to fruition. So they're not going to exactly support you. And for me, it's for anyone who feels disempowered, who wants a change, who knows they need a change, or who have a dream. And sometimes it's lonely. It's lonely being authentic. It's lonely going for your dreams. It can be lonely being true to who you are and saying, I want to do this, or no, I believe this, or this is what my intuition is saying. No. And people trying to persuade you and this and that. When in reality, no, your power, your voice, your soul, as old as it may be, or as young as it may be, it is talking to you, it's speaking to you, and it's important more people listen to that.
I love that. I love that so much. And, you live across the pond. You don't live in the United States. You're not in San Antonio anymore.
No.
how do you keep in touch with that part of you, that Mexican American side? I have family in Texas, so we visit Texas often, and every time I tell my husband it's so hard to leave it, mostly because I love Whataburger and Bluebell. But I know.
Yes.
How do you um how do you stay connected and grounded to that voice when everything around you is so foreign?
Um, well, I have loads of books.
Mhm.
My house is full of stuff from Mexico and Texas. I have an altar in my house.
Yeah.
So where I light my candles, I have my Santa Muerte statues. I have pictures of people who are deceased. I also I try, and honestly, I go there quite a bit for work. So whenever I have to go to the US for book events, or I mean, especially with writing now and how my career is taking off, I've been going a lot. Again, like last year, for example, I had to go to LA. I went again this year, but last year I went, and I spent hours just wandering around East LA, just taking it in, eating the food, going to the markets. I do that when I go to Texas. And but also again, who I am, my culture, my how I feel, it goes wherever I go. I could be in Alaska, I could be in Antarctica, I could be, anywhere, Scotland, I could be in Mexico, and I'd still have it. It's just something that's inside, and I write about it. I'm always doing a lot of research. And for me, that keeps me grounded and still feeling, I know myself. And that's the thing. When you know yourself, you're your own home. And that was really important in Alejandra, for that to come in to the story, that home is wherever you find your soul.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely saw that in the book, and that's why the book is so haunting, because because it's got so many layers. It's a terrifying reality of motherhood, how motherhood is viewed, judged, right? And the loneliness. It's a thankless job. It's a lonely job. And like you said, it's supposed to be a self-sacrificing thing. But thank you for that. And speaking of your career, congratulations on all the wonderful things that are truly just deserved and happening for you. And the
Thank you.
two-time Bram Stoker
Yeah.
nominations. That it's a huge deal, right? In
Yeah.
horror circles and in just literary circles. What is that like for you now? Just kind of like really taking it in. I would imagine it's overwhelming to be so accomplished and this thing that you love so much. You're a horror writer, correct? What led you to this point?
Look, some people would look at me and be like, God, she's so weird and eccentric. I truly believe that this was part of my soul's journey, that this is something my soul has not been able to do until now. I feel like these are stories that my ancestors and other beings wanted me to write and needed me to write, starting from The Queen of the Cicadas, La Reina de las Chicharas, which is about a hate crime in 1950s Texas, and a farm worker, Milagros, because I come from farm workers. Mm-hmm. And it was really important to me to write about the farm working experience in America. But also I talk about Mictexihuatl, the woman, the goddess that, the original goddess. One of the places we believe Santa Muerte is based on, and how beautiful she is. And I really venerate her. Mm. And there's parts in the book I don't remember writing. It was just oh my God, did I write that? Mm-hmm. I think this is something I have been meant to do. And it reached a point in my life where it's either I do it or I lose it.
Mm.
And it was such a strong feeling. It was so strong. And it, it started out with one dream with the first book I wrote. And I could have either dismissed it, but it was so vivid. It was so strong in me. It was placed so deeply in my heart that I started this journey in 2017 and I'm where I'm at in 2023. I am so grateful. And there's so many things that are on the horizon that I'm just like, Lord, thank you. And some great news that will be announced soon with Alejandra. But I feel like this was placed deeply on me because there needs to be that representation. The stories need to be told. The story of La Malinche, I mean, you see the history, but you also, I take her, well, what if she had A, the chance to speak for herself, but B, also live longer? And this story was placed on my heart a while ago, a small little story that I self-published, but something told me it was bigger and it was meant for more. I took it out and I expanded it to 13,000 words to a novel, the second novel with Del Rey, Big Five. I knew I needed to get her out there. I needed her to be seen.
Mm.
And same with Goddess of Filth, another deity, another goddess. It's like I just feel like these stories, these deities want these stories told in a different way. They can't be forgotten because it's important to our culture. There are a lot of important lessons. There's beauty in it. There's strength for our people, for women.
Mm-hmm.
That's important on what I'm meant to do, to be of service. And I love it, and I just feel like there's just something greater at work. And I'm so grateful that I've been given the opportunity, I've been given these gifts, but also the strength to keep going. Because there are times it's hard, it's hard. So I always thank the ancestors for that. And I always say, like, if there's something you need me to say or to write or to tell, then place it in my heart, place it in my mind. And so, yeah, I've got 2 other novels. I've gone away from the goddesses and moving into a whole nother area of history that I think needs to be written. And, I don't know if people are going to like it or not, but I feel drawn to it. So we'll see.
Okay. And you've been at this since you were a child, right? You were writing stories since you were a little
Yeah,
girl.
but again, it's like one of those things. Oh, you're going to be a writer. Oh, you're going to write story. It's just dismissed, and I dismissed myself.
Mm.
That was the journey again. I had to not dismiss myself. I had to actually have a belief in myself, and that's what I hope. Not the stories, but my personal writing journey will help other people, that when you find your self-belief and you stick to it, that amazing things can happen. It can happen for us. It should happen for us.
Mm.
And, we matter. Our stories have value, all of them. And writing in our specific voice, not saying, oh, I'm going to be the next, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I certainly am very grateful, very thankful, and I'm sure a lot of your readers are very thankful that you kept going and that you found that strength, and sending you all of the
Thank
positive
you.
and healing vibes for you so that you can continue this important work and sharing it with the world, so that we can talk about it and so that it can be known, and others can learn from it as well. So thank you so much, V, for your
Thank you
time.
for having me.
Is there are you allowed to tell us when we might be able to see your next work coming out?
Yeah, so Immortal Pleasures, the book about La Malinche, is ready for pre-order, and that will drop in April. So people can pre-order that now. Yeah, I wrote the novelizations of the film Rebel Moon, which is coming out on Netflix. in like a week. So
Okay.
people can buy Rebel Moon. It's actually the rated R version of the film, which is not released. So if people love sci-fi, you can get that. And that's not my work, that's IP. But yeah, please absolutely grab, pre-order Immortal Pleasures, but also if you want a little Christmas spice, I have a novelette called Las Posadas that you can get the paperback or the ebook now for a little Christmas something. And for Dia de los Muertos, I also dropped a little thing called Dia de los Slashers. So some fun little nuggets before Immortal Pleasures hits. And yeah, Alejandra's ready for people to get last minute gifts.
I love it. Thank you so much, V, again for your
Thank
time.
you.
It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. It's been an
My
honor,
pleasure,
in
Alejandra.
fact, to talk to you.
Yes, thank you.
And I really look forward to seeing more of you
Thank
in the
you.
future, to sharing your work as well.
Thank you so much for the help. It all matters. Thank you.
Thank you, V.Castro, for joining us today, and Viviana for your wonderful interview. It's been wonderful listening to you ladies talk. I am so excited. I'm almost finished with the book. No spoiler alerts, so I'm very excited to get to the ending. We want to also thank Rey Books for their generous contribution of books to some of our members, and we wanted to let everyone know that we will be posting a recording of this interview on the Las Comadres para las Americas YouTube channel. I will let everyone send the link and, tag everyone. And so we want to wish everyone a happy holidays, happy reading, and always read Latino Lit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.